Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Lionel, and I'm your host for LT Productions. And you are watching I Watch You Watch. And we are covering Beyond the Gates. I think this is week 14, possibly week 15. I appreciate everyone for coming to my channel. Like this video, subscribe, and also share and leave your comments below. I apologize for last week for not getting any of that done, but I appreciate you being here this week for me. Now let's get into it. Okay, so last week I did miss it all as far as Beyond the Gates. I think a highlight that happened was Chelsea. She came out to her mother about being bisexual. She let her know in regards to how Allison ended up treating her and all that good stuff. Anita had a showdown with one of her ex-bandmates, Tracy, and all that good stuff. And it seemed like there's a secret that Anita's been hiding all of this time. Anyone else? Pam and Danny, Danny and Pam, they kissed. She said it wasn't for Bill and Haley that was coming in, but basically that's what it was for. And Kat is really putting all the pieces together, which this week is a lot more. So let's hurry up and get to this week. So Anita and Tracy are talking because at first everything was going well last week. And then when Anita mentioned a reunion, that's when Tracy kind of just flipped and said, wait a minute, you want to do all this, but don't forget all the stuff that you did trying to get the fame that you got. So Anita says, I can't change the past. All I can do is to own my ambition and what I was willing to sacrifice to reach my goals. Tracy says she knew Anita would come up with pretty stories to shield herself from the awful truth. I said, Lord, what did you do, Anita? At this point, Anita thanks Tracy and basically, thank you for your services, like Shawnee O'Neal. She did offer to pay for her way back to her home. She says she apologizes for bringing up the reunion at all. Tracy says, Anita, you are jumping to conclusions. She's not opposed to a reunion, but we got to stop tiptoeing around the issues. Unless, Anita, you're happy with being haunted. I said, Lord, I'm really interested to know what Anita did. Tracy offers to talk with Sharon because Anita did look, Sharon did hang up on me and all that good stuff. And Tracy says that she's the peacemaker. I really likened them unto the Supremes. And I'll get into the characterization as why I relate to that type of group in a few. So after Tracy leaves, Anita talks with Vernon. She's upset because she tells Vernon, I was not all sweetness and light back in the day. I was ruthless, selfish, and someone I've tried very hard to erase since that time that she had to be that. She asked for Vernon to hold her and all that good stuff. So Kat and Chelsea, they're at Uptown. They're talking a little bit of shop regarding the merchandise that they will be selling. Chelsea talks about Allison, and she realizes that she was the spice in their relationship and not one of the main ingredients. Kat then vents and complains about Thomas refusing to condemn Eva. After Kat gives her rundown on what Thomas was saying, Chelsea was like, well, he's really right. And Kat's like, huh? In conclusion, Chelsea's like it or not, Eva is your sister and she's here to stay. At that point, Thomas did come in, and I'm sure if she had more time, she would have gotten into Chelsea's tale. He sits down and basically says, he's not apologizing for what he said about Eva and all that good stuff. He also implies that he's gotten to know Kat, but Kat has not gotten to know him. Kat is gagged and doesn't appreciate the implication of being too self-involved or self-absorbed. So at this point, Kat allows Thomas to share a part of his life. It has been kind of one-sided, but Thomas, you've been trying to, quote-unquote, win Kat. You don't really give much of yourself. But anyways, things about Thomas is that he loves fantasy novels. He mentors a young boy through the Big Brother program, and that's been going on for 5 years. He's also an avid salsa dancer. And she said, cool, she accepts all that. Now, on the flip, she says, look, I'm entitled to mistrust Eva. She's earned it from the way that she was moving beforehand. Um, and I shouldn't be treated like a bad person because of how I feel. Kat promises to get to know Thomas better, and then they end up having this hot kiss. Honestly, I feel like Kat and Thomas shouldn't be together because it's going to get really crazy later on. It's not like they've really committed to each other. Nobody, they ain't calling each other bae and boo. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't see it working out for them. So Bill and Haley, they are at the country club, and Haley's going on about, she's really getting tired of attending these endless events and the firm ruling their lives. She says that she understands, but she doesn't want to have it. She's getting the second wife syndrome, which means that the second wife gets less. I mean, especially if you've been to court, you get whatever's left. Like, what in the world were you thinking? She said, I had a smaller wedding. Y'all don't have any friends or family. We don't know anything about Bill's family at all. Interesting. We had a shortened honeymoon that you said was okay, and y'all had sex in a limousine and came back. And the community letting her know that she doesn't measure up. I mean, you decided to still be in the community of his ex-wife. That's your fault. You guys could have started your life someplace else, but you just wanted to be here, and now you think somebody's supposed to have sympathy and accept you in. It's not happening. Bill suggests that she has a drink, but she says, no, I can't, because she is pregnant. Of course, she said, this was supposed to be a big surprise and all that. I'm like, you could have came up with other ways to actually say that, but it was kind of whack. Bill is startled at first, and then he becomes excited. And then he says that you've made me the happiest man in the world. And while this is going on, Chelsea shows up, and she finds out that Haley is pregnant. And Chelsea thought, you thought that people were shaming you before. Just you wait. Because you and the baby will be ostracized. What did I do that? Oh, for life. And then Haley ends up telling Chelsea, really, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't give a, her and Bill are for life. Smitty and Martin, they have a one-on-one, because last week it was getting quite tense. Smitty wants to know what Martin is hiding. And this is per what Bill has been suggesting and implying and all this good stuff. And he knows that Martin is lying to him and avoiding certain situations, certain conversations that they need to have. Marty says, what are you feeling right now? I wish I made you as happy as you make me. Ooh. He begins to tear up too. Whatever this is that you're going through, we can get through it together. And I think that is going to be what breaks these two up. Smitty is giving him such an outlet. Just be truthful. You are my husband, and I'm here, and I'm locked in. You are carrying this on your own, and we can carry it together. I think that is what's going to destroy this relationship, because you won't trust him and be vulnerable enough with what you've done. Smitty says, Bill summoned me to tell him that he was implying that he knew something dangerous about Martin. And then he asked Martin, what does he do? Does he know something about you that I don't? Martin plays it off by saying that Bill is a slippery snake, which he is. He loves playing mind games and making power moves. Smitty said, he admits to being jealous that someone knew something about Martin that he didn't know. I said, oh, well, you're in for a treat. So back at the Richardson's home, Martin's home, Tyrell and Jessica, they are studying physics. Due to Samantha encouraging Jessica to, step up and make things happen because Tyrell's not going to do it, she does. They do study, and then Jessica makes a move, and her and Tyrell make out. Haley makes it clear to Chelsea that there's no chance. Oh, this is the next thing. There is no chance that Bill is coming back to Danny. And the sooner that you accept that, the easier it will be for all of us. And Chelsea says that you're not making it easier for either of them. And she leaves. So after Martin's talk with Smitty, he goes to the country club to confront Bill and wants to speak to him alone. And Haley gets up after a few minutes of still sitting there, and they talk. And he asks Bill, are you out of your mind? Coming to my husband, you know my husband. He's got, what do you want to call it, journalism in his DNA. And Bill says that eventually he'll want something from Martin. And my favors aren't free. And Bill says, don't you ever forget who cleaned up your mess that night. And I didn't just fix the situation, I fixed you. Haley comes back and interrupts and announces that she is pregnant. Why does anyone care? I don't know. All of a sudden, Martin loses it. And he goes off on Bill and says, I might have done something terrible one night. Something still haunts me. But this man, Haley, who you are sleeping with, this is the parasite in a suit. Used my terrible night as a business opportunity. Haley's like, what are you talking about? What is he talking about? Da, 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 da. Martin tells Haley to run far and fast. At this point, Bill is agitated and he gets up and grabs Martin and snaps. But at that moment of grabbing his collar, we see that Martin comes back to reality. All that part of him crashing out, it was just a fantasy. However, I enjoyed the scene. I can't wait for more scenes like that and real scenes to happen. So we go back to when Haley said that she was pregnant, and Martin congratulates them, and then he leaves. One of the employees, which I believe is a reporter, is recording the whole conversation. So after the makeout session between Tyrell and Jessica, he pulls away, saying that this must be pity on him or something. And he ends up accusing Jessica of pranking him, because girls like him don't really come to him to try to kiss him and all that good stuff. And Jessica said, my bad for actually catching feelings for someone. So you are toxic, insecure trash. And Jessica leaves. Self-sabotaging. I feel bad for Tyrell. I think it's something that I would do. Or would have 1,000 questions as to why does someone want me? Especially at the caliber. Because I don't think that I deserve it for whatever reason. Martin comes home. Smitty's there. And he's asking, where did you go? There was an emergency voting that he had to attend. And Smitty said, the emergency voting that got canceled? I mean, it came on the phone before you even left me. Where did you go? Then he ends up, or Smitty may have figured out, you went to go see Bill. How did you know that? I know you so well, Martin. And I knew that you weren't just satisfied with the conversation that we did have. And basically, you did all this. Why didn't you just tell me? Martin comes up with another excuse, and then he ends up curtailing the conversation to Haley being pregnant. And he says he doesn't want to be anywhere near his Aunt Danny. So Chelsea runs to Danny's home, and Danny's telling her all of her ambitions at the moment. She wants to use her social media moments, going viral, as a way to save her reputation. Chelsea's trying to tell her, and then eventually she had to grab Danny and say, hey, I'm trying to tell you something. And she ends up telling her about this baby. Now, Danny thought, Chelsea was asking, are you going to be okay? And Danny was like, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I intend to take the news standing up. I said, go ahead, Danny. But then the ball drops. She begins to be shady and talking about this baby is a midlife crisis bingo card. Is Bill really the father? What if there's no baby at all? And Chelsea's like, Mom, you're doing too much, per usual. Danny, after Chelsea leaves, goes and visits Bill and Haley. She's able to get in there uninvited because Bill has not changed the codes on the house, which is very weird. So I think Haley was right in the living room. And Haley, after saying, what are you doing here? Da, 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 da. I know you didn't come by this late just to congratulate me on our baby. And then Danny says, oh, Haley, I came to do more than that. We find out that Ashley and Derek are back on track. They've agreed that they rushed in too fast to move in together, and they're going to live separately now so that they can have a good relationship. Naomi and Jacob, they join in and they tell the good news. They're in such envy of their relationship, and they say, look, you don't know what we were like when we first moved in together. Jacob just knew everything. I don't know if they'll actually touch because they kind of have made them the good couple and all that good stuff, but we know they did that with Ted and Nicole. And then we're finding out all this stuff. I just want to know when the gauntlet is going to drop on this relationship. Um, Back with Danny and Haley, Bill has always had a soft spot for babies, and now he'll have two in his house at the same time. I said, "Lord." You and that, what did I say? Oh, imaginary child. Haley says just because you can't handle the truth doesn't make it less real, calling her baby a lie. While Danny is jealous of an unborn baby. It's pitiful. And Haley has a warning. She says, if you keep getting in my face, insulting and denying my child's existence, I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me. I said, oh, Haley has a backbone. Bill comes in and Danny tells him that Haley is faking this pregnancy. As Haley and Danny are going back and forth, you see the enjoyment that Bill has that two women are fighting over him. So then Haley says, you're right, I am faking this pregnancy. Da, 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 da. And then she laughs. Haley says, you're free to leave, Danny. And Danny says, oh, you're good. You're very good. As she's walking out, she says, but as soon as the door closes, you will dissolve into tears and fall into Bill's arms, trying to prove that the pregnancy is real. Matter of fact, as soon as Danny walked out, that's what happened. So Bill and Haley, they talk about, now that she's pregnant, she said that she knows that she's pregnant beyond the shadows of doubt. We haven't seen her take a pregnancy test. Just saying. Bill is thinking, like, do we need to abstain from sex? And she was like, no, pregnancy hormones and all that stuff. You continue to have sex. What was just crazy is that Haley was already talking about pregnancy hormones. You just got pregnant. I don't think that your hormones start changing as of yet. However, I'm not a woman, so a woman could let me know if that's true or not. So at Orphagenes, Kat got security footage from Andre, that's weird. And they see security footage of that skeptical nurse, aka Sheila, or whatever her name's, you know her. And they ask Mona to sit down and to see if she notices anything. Kat is pressing her to almost say it's Leslie, and Jacob's like, chill, let her. Mona says, well, now that I know what I'm looking for, she says with every fiber in her being, this must be Leslie. And then she says, but I'm not for sure. They can't really make her out. Y'all need to go to Shanice. Shanice would know. She was there. Then Leslie comes to Ted's hotel. Ted wants her gone, but then she is threatening to make a spectacle of herself. So then Ted pulls her in and lets her come in. Leslie thanks him for getting Eva a seat at the salon. She said that she's worried about Eva. She claims that Eva asked, were her parents ever going to get back together? But how come Eva didn't ask him? Like right then and there, I would have been done already, but she's crazy. Ted says that's a hard no. And Leslie says, was there ever anything between us? But then she says, we got to be a united front, forgive each other for our daughter's sake. Then she goes on about Alan, her husband that she married. He was dismissive towards Eva, and Eva had always wanted her real dad to be her knight in shining armor. Ted apologizes, which I don't understand. Why? Because you were under the impression that she aborted this baby. He regrets that he gave Leslie hope that there would be a future together. Leslie is the woman I love. That won't ever stop. Then Leslie says, well, Nicole rejected you. And she doesn't seem to care about how much pain you are in. I said, ain't that a way to manipulate and try to make things about Nicole? Ted tells Leslie that Nicole did nothing wrong. And then ends up telling her, you gotta go. shows at the door. He opens the door, and Kat is right there, horrified seeing him with Leslie. Leslie starts touching him and all this stuff, suggesting that they were into something. Ted had to, plead with Kat, like, no, nothing's happening here and all that. She says that she believes that nothing happened, but still criticizes Ted for his naively allowing Leslie to remain in his life. Maybe you want to be with her. Of course, Ted said that's not the case. Kat said, however, I'm going to go. As they were making progress, that was just another way of Leslie destroying his family. Whew, now this next thing, Doug and Vanessa and Joey. Doug tells Joey, like, maybe what you're telling me is that if you don't get what is yours, you'll take what's mine. Indeed. So Joey and Vanessa, they flirt, and then he invites her to gamble at his club. He goes to the club with her, they start gambling, and Doug is at the club too, and he spots them, and he's surprised and not pleased at what he's seen. Anyway, Doug sneaks out because he doesn't want anyone to know about his gambling problem. As Vanessa is winning, she's ready to really get a cut of losses from there. She says that there's more fun that they could do. At this point, Joey clears the room and instructs one of the employees to leave and lock the door behind him. They set the mood with the lighting, and then they have sex right there on the gambling table. I said, Lord Jesus. I know Vanessa's happy that she actually told Doug, oh, I'm doing this. So now that it isn't that horrible if something ever comes out. So back at Uptown, Danny wants to drink. It's after hours and all that, but she ends up getting the waiter to let her in. Doug comes in. They're both feeling the same ways about their own situations, and they kind of commiserate and have a drink. All right, so Anita, she's on pins and needles waiting to see Sharon and Tracy. She hears the doorbell ring and answers the door, but it's just Tracy. Anita assumes that Sharon backed out of all of this. And Tracy says, no, she's here. She's at the hotel resting. And Tracy says that I will meet with Sharon alone at Orpha Jeans. And I'm going to do my best. So Tracy and Sharon, they go to Orpha Jeans. And they talk about old times and possibly just talking with Anita and all that. She says if Anita and Vernon thought that this was going to be some kind of sweet family reunion, they got another thing coming. Tracy says, it's time to stop punishing each other for the things that were beyond our control. And then Sharon says, you might have a convenient memory, but I'm not forgetting nothing. And what she says is that I need to see Anita exhibit some genuine regret for whatever she did. So as I was saying earlier about Anita and Tracy and Sharon reminded me of the Supremes. Anita was Diana. Tracy was Mary Wilson. Sharon is Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard had an attitude. So that's how I'm liking them to be. But y'all can let me know what you guys think of that. So as Anita's waiting on Tracy and Sharon, Vernon uses reverse psychology on Anita and says that he apologizes for ever suggesting to Anita to reach out to Sharon and Tracy. Of course, Anita catches on and said, look, you did what needed to be done. And that's just that. You don't have to do this. Sharon comes by the house and Anita answers the door. She's stunned. And then Sharon says, do I need an engraved invitation or special booties to get inside of the palace? I said, Lord Jesus. If y'all thought that Tracy was tough, no, this one, So back at Uptown, Danny has a hangover. Pamela calls her over and she's trying to set Danny up with the guy. Danny mistakes the guy as someone who could be a potential model. He's asking all these different questions and all that. And then Pamela lets on, no, he's for you. She doesn't want the normal stuff, but he ends up saying, I can take you out shopping, da-da-da-da-da. And that sparked her interest. A little bit. However, she said that she really isn't interested to Pam and all that. Pam says that you need to get back on the horse. Danny ended up having to say, if you must know, I'm already riding a horse. Or I already have a horse and I'm enjoying the ride. And then she ends up saying, it's Andrea. And of course, Pam wants every detail. Danny wants Pamela to promise to stay quiet. She doesn't want Nicole to know right now, due to this could be looking at another betrayal in Nicole's eyes. But Pamela's not convinced that Andre is okay with this. So Andre stops by Ted's office and informs Ted of the new evidence that's against Leslie in regards to trying to unalive Laura. And Andre asks, does Ted have feelings for Leslie? He says no. He lets it be known that he is taking it chill with Danny. Of course, that surprises Ted, and he promises to keep it quiet. But he does warn him not to screw it up with Ted, or you're going to be added to the long list of men that have done wrong by a Dupree woman. So Ted ends up sending flowers to Nicole because he didn't know how to really reach her anymore. Obviously, when Nicole got the flowers and there was a note in there, she ended up putting the flower in her hair right there. So obviously it has an effect on her. And we're getting some breakthrough. Mona and Kat, they are going through, I think they're having like a clothing giveaway or what they're giving to charity or whatever for the church. Kat ends up confiding in Mona that she walked in on Ted and Leslie. They quickly change the subject when Nicole enters the room, and Kat covers by saying that there's some new evidence about Leslie. While they're going through some of the clothes that are going to be going, Kat finds this leather jacket, and she ends up putting her hands through the pocket. First, she's just wearing it as a fashionable statement, and this looks good on me, da 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 da. Then she starts finding this parking ticket with no license plate number. And where this happened at was near the warehouse of where the accident was. She also finds a cafe receipt that's spelled out as Sherry, Cherriec. But they could have easily messed that up when taking the order. Then she also finds a receipt from one of the thrift stores. Mona recognizes it because her and Ashley's mom and Leslie, they go to the thrift shop. It's their retail therapy. I think Nicole said, well, she needs real therapy. Leslie. So at this point, they're really getting close to a lot of evidence. They just got to put it all together and let's get Leslie out of here. So Leslie is back home and she's frantically trying to dispose of all the motorcycle stuff that she has in her closet. She has headphones on and Eva comes over. She walks in, but Leslie doesn't know that she's there. So Eva walks back out and makes sure she knocks and all that good stuff. Leslie eventually hears her and lets her in. She pretends that she didn't see anything. Eva has come to pack up the rest of her things. And they start talking about, like, why did you tell Kat that I was the one that ran down Laura? And she said, oh, I was just trying to defend you, da-da-da-da-da. Leslie wants her key back. She said, well, you mean I can't stop over and all that? She said, yes, but you do as normal folks do. You knock. But she wants her key back because she chose to be with the Richardsons and the Duprees over her. Eva's begging her, I want things to be back as they were. It's like, no, go over to your fancy folk and all that good stuff. Eva leaves, and then Leslie goes to Orphan Jeans. She spots Kat and Mona talking about something and talking about this witch's coven crap. But Eva did not leave as she thought, or at least Leslie thought. She comes back with a spare key, as was taught by her mama, and she goes straight to that closet to get all of the motorcycle stuff. Now, will Eva sacrifice her mother once again, or be manipulated by the mother to lie on her and all this good stuff? That remains to be seen. But I enjoyed this week, especially as we're getting some acceleration into this whole Laura situation. Kat, go and speak to Shanice, please. I'm interested to see what all Sharon's got to say on next week and all that good stuff. But that's all I do have. Y'all let me know how y'all thought about these week's episodes. And until next week, peace.